And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi Boyd, and we are in the middle of a guest fest with lots of fantastic experts in their fields, sharing with you their knowledge and expertise that you, yourselves, as small businesses can learn. So thank you for joining me on the program again today. And we're talking about the gig economy we have been doing for the last couple of weeks. What sort of resources are out there? How can we tap into it as small business? And what do you need to know to basically keep abreast of the latest technologies? Last week we welcomed Melinda from Income Connections, telling us a little bit about her connections with all the different types of gig economy websites. You've obviously got your Airtask, because we're all pretty familiar with that. But things like sharing desks or sharing space or even sharing restaurants in some cases, there's a lot of resources out there that we can use as small businesses. And today we've got a very special guest, Ben Eatwell, who's here from WePlay, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about the gig economy when it comes to people and personnel, and what small business can learn, and also what big business can learn when it comes to small business as well. We're going to be talking about the managing risk and uncertainty when it comes to workforce design in your business, understanding where the more flexible workforce can be utilised by small business, but also we're going to keep in mind the importance of compliance and understanding what rules and regulations that you need to know about. So welcome to the program, Ben. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Alexi.
Look, I'm excited about today's show because you yourself have got quite a history with, I guess we could say, big business, but you're equally passionate about small business as well. Can you take me a little bit through your journey and why is it that you really enjoy working for this company, WePlay?
Yeah, so as you said, I've worked for a lot of the big tech companies. So previously, before WePlay, I was working at LinkedIn, and I loved it there. It's a great culture. It's really fun. But I've always wanted to be part of something and build something up from the ground up. And so this is when WePlay, I had a long conversation with the co-founder over the course of about 6 months, and really felt that the vision and what they were trying to do with WePlay in terms of building a fearless and empowered future of work was something that it really resonated with me. Back in the day when I was working, just come out of university, I had this dream of starting my own business, and I had my business, and I had a working on the side as well, but I could never actually put enough into my small business in order to make it work, because I was always worried about sort of paying the bills. And so when Tony, the co-founder, talked to me about WePlay and how we're trying to create a platform where anyone can come onto the platform, get work whenever they want. It enables you to really sort of live your passion, live your dream. So if you want to have a small business or a side project or whatever it is, you can do that, but also have no fear about making sure you can pay the bills. So that's why WePlay really resonated with me. It's
interesting that you came from a small business passion and mindset really to bring it through. It's something we're going to talk about a little bit in the show later on, which is the way that big business almost seems to be emulating what small business does successfully with their staff management. Now let's get straight into it, because there's loads we're going to talk about today. So talking about risk and uncertainty, and I think that when it comes to hiring staff, when it comes to growing and bringing on especially your first employee, it's a big hurdle for small business, and there's a big fear factor, mainly because people don't really understand what's involved, but also trying to find the right person and the right fit. So, there's a lot of costs involved, and that can put people off. So where do you think small business can learn about managing risk in this way?
And the first thing to do is make sure you get outside help from experts. I think it's one of the classic reasons why all small businesses fail is because you're not getting the support or the expert advice that you need. And so especially when it comes to hiring staff and payroll costs, this can be such a huge portion of your entire cost structure for your business that you really want to be making sure that you're getting as much information from people who have done this before, who understand it. Reach out to your networks, but also, reach out to experts in the field, bookkeepers or whoever who can sort of give you that advice.
It's very important, isn't it, to surround yourself with good people and find the right consultant. And we always talk about that on the show. We talk about, check in with your professional association, see if they can recommend anyone that really understands the lay of the land when it comes to your industry that you work in. You mentioned a little bit about understanding the numbers. What sort of analytics should small business be aware of when they're trying to grow or when they're starting to take on staff?
Right, yeah.
Apart from the cost, like we all know about the cost, we know about payroll tax or pay-as-you-go income tax, we know about super and how compliant we need to be with that. But what other sort of numbers should they be aware of?
Well, with all those numbers, you need to be looking at what is your outcome. So often you can get sort of data paralysis where you're just pulling in lots of information, but you're not really nowhere near where to go with it. So the most important thing is to know what is your outcome. Are you trying to grow the business? Are you trying to scale it out to new regions? Are you trying to find more efficiencies in the business? Once you understand that, that will give you some idea around the metrics. There's some things that, you can always look at, looking at who, if you do have a team, who is your best staff and trying to understand what makes up, what are the characteristics, where do they come from, what is their background, what are some of the characteristics they display when they're working. That will help you identify future talent. Also looking at areas of the business where you might have the shortest tenure. So where there's a high turnover of staff, why is that? What is sort of that role? Sometimes we speak to a lot of people who have this belief that you need to have full-time employees. And so they have these roles such as in customer service, where it's a very sort of high-pressure environment, and they have a high churn rate, 25, 30% churn rate. And they're continually trying to sort of bring people into the business. And it's like, well, actually, is a full-time employee the best person for this role? If you're going to get a high churn, maybe you just accept that. That might be part of the role. Not everyone wants to be sitting in customer service and fielding, hundreds of calls every day. So how can you think about your workforce design to make it more realistic to your employees?
I like what you were saying there before about the different skills that each of them bring. And sometimes you do kind of need to sit down with a bit of paper and write down all the skills that perhaps you're not utilising about your staff, and that will enable a bit more flexibility. I like when we met for coffee the other day, you were mentioning how the greater flexibility comes from the people that you work with. So if you look at, well, go back to their CV. Which part of their skills are you not utilising? Well, ask them. Sit down with them and say, what would you prefer to be doing? What is it that you're lacking in development or in projects that you would like to do with this role? And I also like we were talking about it a little bit and mentioning about the flexible workforce and trying to find the balance between under-resourcing or hiring workers who can be more flexible. Is there a golden rule to that, or does it really depend on what industry you're in?
I would say not even the industry, but based on your business. So looking at when you have high peaks in demand, whether you are trying to drive more sales in a particular area, whether you have a high response rate. So all businesses have to deal with uncertainty. And this is the major thing. I think, there's this term, I think that was the US military used, which is VOCU, which is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. VOCA, that's it.
Right.
And it talks about sort of battlefield environments, but it's been used a lot now in business to think about with digital disruption, with a lot of technology coming in, businesses now have to compete not just in their little sphere that they've competed in before, but also you've got international players, you've got your big players, you've got your startups, all eroding market share and trying to steal market share from you. In these sort of really sort of uncertain times, you need to be more agile. The big businesses are really feeling this right now. This is what we alluded to around sort of big business learning from the small. They look at the big banks. You have lots of little financial services players now coming in and trying to snap little parts of it, taking one little horizontal, one little vertical. And the only way they can try and fight against that is to be more agile and try and create more agility into their workforce. So this is where sort of thinking about, and I think the term often calls it a blended workforce. So, full-time employees are there. You've got contractors, freelancers. They can be slightly different depending on your thing. You've got gig workers. You've got crowd. Crowdsourcing is a way that
crowdsourcing
crowdsourcing talent. So in marketing, for instance, user-generated content is a really powerful a way to communicate with your audience. So we're actually using our audience to build content to speak to our new audience.
Yeah.
So you should be thinking about your customers well as part of this sort of resource that you have available to you to sort of engage them and as a way to build either more efficiency or generate more revenue or save some costs.
And so if you're sitting there looking at, you've got a particular project in mind, for instance, this is where big business is starting to become more flexible. I think you called it a more level playing field. Was that the right word? Just sort of a flattening out effect of instead of having hierarchy and who reports to who and whose specific job role it is. Nobody looks at job titles anymore. It's sort of becoming more blended, as you mentioned. Is that Is that something that we need to learn from and think about using and utilising in our own business as well?
Definitely. I think that what we're seeing, and I see it in a lot of large organisations, was in terms of some of our customer base, we have customers from very small all the way to very large. And so we see sort of what's going on in the industry. And especially in the larger companies, they are really trying to, and it comes back to this agility, how to become more agile. Traditional organizational structures, which is very hierarchical. So you have these business silos, you have your marketing team, your sales team, your customer service team, and so on. Those organizational silos are built for efficiency. So they're built to, everything's done to make that process more efficient. But it really that comes at the cost of being able to communicate and provide more interaction between the different business silos. And so we get these silos of information, and they spend thousands or millions of dollars on technology to try and sort of bridge those sort of communication silos.
It's like that whole thing between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
The fact that one group doesn't talk to another, and for the rest of us we're going, but you do the same thing, so why aren't you just working together as a team?
And it's because they've been put in these organizational silos. They have their own separate metrics, KPIs, they think in a different way now. So businesses now understand that. They understand that they need to be more agile. They need to be more innovative if they're going to compete with these smaller players. So I see it a lot where they're trying to reduce the number of layers between the workers, the employees, and the management, senior management. Trying to create that sort of flatten that hierarchical structure, because what it does, it allows people to, just by definition of doing that, you remove those organizational silos, because you can't have as many silos. And that increases engagement, communication, and innovation. Also, what that enables you to do is be able to work in more project-based ways. So we see that a lot. So previously at LinkedIn, I was really starting to move quite determinedly towards project-based working. So we would have specific projects with an outcome we're aiming for, and then we would try and build the team around that project outcome and resource it the right way. In fact, we even had an internally built platform that you could put in your project details, and then people could then say, I want to be part of this project, and you could bring them on, and whether they're based in the US or Bangalore, you could all work together for the outcome of this project based in Sydney. It's
like a little mini gig economy within a massive giant like LinkedIn.
Yeah, and because they knew more different ways of thinking, that diversity of thinking creates better outcomes and more innovation.
And also the fact that a project base, I mean, that's a lot of the ways, even when it comes to expanding our business, small businesses, we think in terms of projects. We think, I've got this new project coming in. It's going to be huge. I need to expand quickly. I need to surround myself with the right people, and that's where it sort of comes into it.
I think also there's an interesting, we talk about agile, which really comes from engineering. There's another term that comes from the engineering world, which is jobs to be done, which is a structure of how do you think about your product, and how are you going to think about your product development. I sort of also think about how can we apply that into more of our human resources or business operations, because often I think sometimes we think about, well, I need marketing to be done, so I need a marketing person, and I'm thinking about the role, and I'm not thinking about the tasks and activities that need to be done. And so even by thinking in those sort of structures of, this is the marketing manager I want, it's already putting limitations on should I be actually really sort of taking a step back and going, these are the activities I need to get done in order to achieve my sales growth or achieve X or Y. And then what does that person look like? I'm trying to find that person. It might be 2 part-time roles with 2 different people. It might be half BDM, half marketing. It might be, you might need 2 people for it working, part-time. Or maybe you can use contractors for one part or freelancers for one part, and, hire or crowdsource the other part. There's different ways to think about it. So it's just being more open-minded and more flexible in terms of your approach to your staff, and thinking about what is the best way to achieve the goal, not thinking, I need a marketing manager or I need a salesperson.
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic way of looking at it. We're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters and come back after this. And when we return, we're going to talk about the impacts on absenteeism on business, and methods that you can use to try and annihilate those costs to your business. You're listening to Small Biz Matters. My name is Alexi Boyd. We'll be back after this. So today we're talking to Ben Eatwell from WePlay, who's been sharing with us some of his vast knowledge when it comes to managing risk, understanding workforce design, and us learning from larger companies how they're becoming more flexible and more agile. Ironically enough, they're probably getting some of that from small business and the things that we do. But one of the main impacts on not only the bottom line, the costings, but even just workforce culture is absenteeism. Now, Ben, you place a lot of temporary staff into organisations, and I guess one of the things they're trying to solve is the problem of absenteeism. How big an impact is that on small business? Why is it so huge?
The numbers I can't, but it's over 30 million that it costs the Australian economy each year, absenteeism. The fact is that everyone is going to be sick at some point. So there is a couple of things we have to think about. Either what is the impact to our business in terms of the costs associated with that, in terms of sick pay, all those sort of entitlements, but also what is it doing to the productivity? So there's certain things that you can manage, and you can improve things with a really clear absenteeism policy, making sure it's communicated. A lot of the time, we just sort of put a piece of paper in front of someone and say, this is the absenteeism policy. No one reads it, and no one really understands what is expected of them.
So maybe something you can link into your monthly or monthly chats that you have with your staff is just reminding them of that, or if you're feeling like that's starting to impact on your business negatively. But you have to be careful, don't you? Because there's a lot of legislation around the pressurisation of people when they are absent and the reasons for which they're being absent. So just do be careful with that, obviously.
Definitely, and you have to understand why that is the case. So, I've worked in organisations before where I've had to look for, do the Bradford Index, which is it's a score that it basically assumes that lots of small absences are more impactful or more impactful on the business than larger ones. So it really sort of highlights when you get to above a certain score, then you should need to have some more conversations. But part of that was that score was only a trigger. Every single absentee had to have a return to work interview. So, and that was to really understand, was there any other underlying issues? Were there any problems that we could help them with? Just making sure that they haven't got some issues that we should be understanding and giving them some more support around. So it's definitely, often people can think of managing absenteeism in this very sort of, stick way, in terms of, we are the employer, we're going to, we don't want absenteeism, we want, to make sure that you're here every day working, as a dog. But no, being like a responsible employer, you should be thinking about the well-being of your staff, understanding that, but part of that well-being of your staff is understanding that there is like an expectation on their when they need to turn up to work. What is the process in terms of calling in sick? And just being clear around that communication and just taking away all of this sort of inference of, oh, I'm calling in sick, therefore you think I'm taking a sickie, there's a lot of like assumptions that go into this. So just being clear, having it written down as a policy, and just being honest and holding people to account to make sure everything's clear and in the open.
You raise a good point there with people who are calling in sick. Yes, I agree, there is that sort of sickie culture that we have in Australia, unfortunately. But what's interesting is if you had a very clear policy on when you need to know, then you can solve the problem for that day, can't you? I mean, if you literally say to yourself, look, if you're feeling like crap the night before, would you please just give me a heads up? Because then I can put something in place so I can understand what meetings need to be moved. But if you're calling me at 8:45 because you've slept in, because you felt crap the night before and you knew it, please be honest with me and give me a bit of a heads up, because, and if you make that part of your policy and keep an open door policy, but you're happy for people to be sick. It's fine for people to be absent. It happens. But just let me know.
Yeah, because the opposite of absenteeism is presenteeism, and that can be just as impactful onto the productivity. So
presenteeism.
So if someone just sits at work and they're ill, they're not really doing anything.
Making everyone else sick.
Yeah, I've fallen foul of this a few times before, where I'm sitting there, I can't concentrate, I'm feeling like death, but I'm turning into work because I've got a team and I need to be there for my team.
Who you've now just made sick.
Yeah, and I've just made them sick. So it's, that is just as bad. Yeah. So it's, absenteeism is one, presenteeism is another major issue. Again, there are numbers on what presenteeism is, but it has a significant impact on the Australian economy as a whole.
There's a bit of an elephant in the room when it comes to absenteeism, which is, we're trying to be nice bosses, we're trying to enable people to work from home more if they're not feeling up to it, that maybe they can get some productivity done by working from home. But that doesn't solve some of the issues that absenteeism creates, which is not only a drop in productivity from you because you're not there, but also because you're impacting the team simply by not being, in the office. That doesn't solve that problem, does it?
No, I really do. I have a very strong policy in terms of if you're ill, you're ill.
Yeah.
I don't want you working. I don't want you doing stuff like...
Stop checking your emails.
Yeah, it's like, if there are really, really urgent things, but I want to really make sure there's a difference. So there's, if you want to work from home because you've got certain priorities, certain things you need to do at home, and it's not affecting your productivity, great, we can sort out a work from home policy, that sort of thing. But what I don't want is to have, I'm feeling a little bit ill, so I'm going to work from home today. That's sort of like, it's merging the two together, and it becomes very grey, and it not just impacts sort of, even if they're working really well, it can impact other members of your team as well. If they're seeing someone always working from home, and there's no policy set up for working from home, why don't I have that? It creates distrust. It can just create conflict. So again, it's where sort of clarity around sort of the roles and responsibilities and a policy is really important to make sure that everyone feels like they're being fairly treated.
I'll give you an example of where working from home could be a positive, though. I know one of my clients is a logistics company. They've had an absolutely phenomenal office manager. She's absolutely fantastic. But they're moving further away from where she lives. So the drive is going to go from being 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes each way. She has asked to work from home. They've said no. They're going to lose her. So it's this is another way that you need to be flexible and really listening to your staff. I know from the way that this business operates that it's going to have a massive detrimental effect. The learning curve for the next person to come in is huge. And she's absolutely fantastic office manager and has a great skill set. So in this way, this is where they're going to lose out. But I can understand it from the manager's perspective. He's thinking, well, unless you're in the office, you can't be answering the phones. The drivers, when they come in, they can't ask you questions. You're not available to them. And I guess it's a bit of a...
It's a really tough one. You should definitely try and be as flexible as possible. And so this is where thinking about, not thinking about the role so much, but thinking about what are the tasks and activities, and can this be done away from the office?
Oh, it can, because we're talking about bookkeeping in the cloud. So absolutely, those aspects can be done in the office.
If you have to be there to answer calls or answer calls, maybe there's a way you could do that. We've got VoIP, voice over internet. That you can manage that. If you need to be in the office, though, office manager sounds like you might need to be in the office to manage the day-to-day goings. That's when it gets a little more difficult, because you don't want to be setting someone up for failure either. So saying, work from home, you can do this 3 days a week or 2 days a week from home, and then they're suddenly stressed out because the other 3 days have got to catch up on the work they couldn't get done in the last 2 days.
Or this could be an example of where you split the role. You have a receptionist who works the days that they're not there just to handle the calls and handle the inquiries, which then can be flicked to the office manager who can handle them remotely. It just seems to me quite a kind of a stupid business decision, quite frankly, because they're not being flexible.
Not being flexible, exactly. And so rethinking about that structure. Can I bring in someone to work, as I said, part-time? So they can both go part-time, they can have a job share, whether that's internal, whether they bring someone else on in a part-time role to manage that. You just got to start moving away from this concept that I've got this role, I need a full-time person all the time. Actually, let's just break this down, understand the tasks and activities, and let's come to it with a bit more of an innovative sort of point of view and going, it doesn't have to be done by a full-time employee. I can think about different ways of doing this, whether it's, job sharing. There might be other opportunities based on those tasks and activities. Maybe they can share that out a little bit more into the team, or maybe there's certain activities that she can do full-time and take on new activities working from home. There's a whole range of things that could be done based on the individual situation. Exactly.
So it is sort of one of those ideas where it's a bit of an old-fashioned way of thinking. The office manager, the receptionist, sits there and takes calls and not much else. Whereas, and this is a nice little segue into valuing your admin team. Quite often you see, if we take big business, for instance, with all the restructuring that we were mentioning earlier in the program and the flattening out of the workforce, what we're finding is that executive assistants are, instead of being made redundant, what they're doing is they're just taking on more and more responsibility and more managers to look after. And I think there's a real skill set in the admin community that is not valued across the board. Now you've got more of this cloud-based accounting, more in-house work with payroll and accounting that can be done because it's easier to do now. But that's just one facet. Can you tell me about some of the real skills that you think are undervalued in the admin for the admin community? I
definitely think admin is hugely undervalued. We obviously at WePlay, we provide business support and admin staff only. That's what we do. And often when we talk to these people, they think about, bringing on specialised skills and think about, I want someone to build a strategy, or I want this expert in this certain field. they don't sort of understand that actually admin is a way that you execute a strategy. So strategies mean absolutely nothing if nothing gets done about it. And we have so many of like managers and really great people who sit there, and then a lot of admin work gets sort of left behind. I've done it myself in the past. I have got all these projects. For instance, in a previous role, we wanted to do a big mail out to our top customers. It's sort of the C-suite from our big customers, our top 50 customers. And we were like, okay, the first thing we need to do, we need to find out their addresses. So we looked into our database, our CRM, and it was a big company. We had a great CRM, and we didn't have their addresses, though. Okay, so, all right, let's put this on the to-do list. We're going to go find their addresses, go and sort of, fill out that data so then we can do this mail out for Christmas. We had a few months. We go, okay, we've got a few time. Anyway, it just kept getting put off. And in the end, we just scrapped the whole idea. We sent a few to the people we did have, but we didn't actually do this big sort of data enrichment project because it was admin and it constantly got deprioritized.
Yeah.
So that's just the importance of admin, but the skill sets are really important because with sort of AI and automation taking on a lot of sort of the basic data entry, that sort of activities, the skill set of an admin person now is really being elevated. So what I'm seeing as well is the stakeholder management skills are really quite incredible in some of the admin stuff that are coming through. All of the WePlays that come onto the platform actually do a psychometric test and some skills testing. And we look at a number of areas, but one of the key ones is learning agility. So that is the ability to take on complex information, internalize it, and then apply it. And when we look at some of those scores that the people that we're getting in from, these are sort of not just Gen Y. Gen Y, isn't it? Yeah, Gen Z is the new one, isn't it? So I always forget these new gens. They've got really great learning agility, and their ability to come in and take on sort of these complex, abstract ideas and apply them is incredible, actually, and probably better than a lot of the more senior people I've worked with in the past. So in terms of the skill set there, definitely do not undervalue these people. They actually really are the driving force behind your business. Because otherwise,
the doers.
They are. Otherwise, you just, as I said,
otherwise you're just making butcher paper and putting pretty pictures on the wall, and there's no
lovely post-it notes on
great idea. No and execution. And I guess it's distilling down those processes and procedures, isn't it? It's taking what is a concept and saying, okay, that's great. I mean, you had the idea that you had to go and get the addresses, but that's where it stopped. Perhaps there wasn't anybody with the research skills to go, all you do is this is where you look, or these are the websites I'm aware of, or this is how I have done it previously. So I think research is a really big one. And a lot of admin people are just pushed into the bookkeeping role or the social media role. But I think things like that, creating processes and procedures and understanding what that person can do. And when we met the other day, you mentioned that in a lot of ways it's great to sit down and make a list of all the really, I don't want to say basic because that, again, undervalues admin, but all the tasks which I guess you don't have time for. And then I think people would be surprised by all those back-end procedures that it's a wish list, really. I would love, for example, to have a processes and procedural document for how I engage with a new client, onboarding a new client. Does anybody actually have the process written down? That's what an admin person can do for you.
Oh, so that is probably, I think, one of the, talking about admin and undervalued, those sort of process documents are probably the most undervalued document any business can have. The reason being is that you cannot scale a business. And in tech, we talk about scale till it comes out of our ears. But we always think about scale, 10x. But when you're thinking about scaling a business, you cannot do that if you don't have a process. So if you're trying to make up everything on the fly all the time, there's no way you can scale that. The most efficient way is to find out what's working, document it, and make sure that's shared. And so I do it at WePlay. We've been in market for around 12 months now. So we bring on WePlayees in to document and write all of our processes. So we can create these handbooks that we can just hand over. So when I bring on a new marketing person, a new salesperson, this is how we sell, this is how we go to market, this is how to use the systems, this is how everything, and it sort of speeds everything up and allows us that scale, especially as we start thinking, do we want to move internationally? At that point, we need to have all these documents written up and these processes in place. Otherwise, it's just going to all fall apart. And so if I was going to give one piece of advice, I'd say if you are looking at growth and scale in your business, definitely get those processes defined and get them written up, because it will just streamline that growth.
It's something that is an absolute must in small business in particular, because so much of the knowledge that you have is inside the handful of people that work in your business. Yeah. And inside your own mind as well. And that's where a lot of people have trouble letting go, is saying, I need to find another me. I need to duplicate myself. Well, really, no, you're not perfect. And there are people out there who can behave like you and also bring other skills to the business. And that is basically the definition of growth. Otherwise, it's just the definition of duplication. And maybe there's things you're not so good at. Look, we're going to take another short break here on Small Biz Matters, and we'll be back after this. We're going to talk a little bit more about the structure of employment within small business and how you can learn from organisations like WePlay. We are on Triple H 100.1 FM. We'll be back. And welcome back to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. We are all about small business education, and today we are learning from Ben Eatwell from WePlay. Ben has a great deal of experience dealing in not just the flexible workforce gig economy subject that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, but also in larger organisations. And Ben, I wanted you to share with me one of those stories you told me the other day about when you placed someone quite successfully into a larger organisation, and how did that person really turn the organisation around?
Yeah, there's a couple of examples, and we always try and really understand what we're doing and the difference we're making, because it really helps us as a business know we're going in the right direction and living towards that vision. One of my favourite stories was, and it really shows like the platform and how it works so well, is that we had Kathy from Lonely Planet, who was the HR manager there, and she was coming into work one morning and talking about absenteeism. She got a phone call from her receptionist saying she wasn't able to come in today, she was sick. And this is about 7:30 in the morning. So Kathy was like, normally, how do I deal with this? I need to have someone on front desk. It's really important for us. So she was going to have to phone around some temporary recruiters, get some CVs, and she knew maybe at best she might get someone in about midday. Until then, one of her customer service team was actually going to have to man the front desk. And so that's actually, they only had a very small customer service team. And so that was going to have a significant impact on the customer service. So she sort of logged onto the platform, posted the job, and I think she posted the job at about 7:32. And then within about 33 seconds, the job was accepted. And so by the time Kathy got into work in the morning, so it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, she turned up, and then the WePlay, Audrey, was sitting there on the front desk. And she actually bought some donuts for her as well, I think. Just saying, I'm here, don't worry. But what was so great, so she had a bit of, although she was only there for one day, they actually kept her on for a little bit longer, because while she was there, she actually looked at the processes that the reception was managing, because there was sort of like a bit of a hybrid role, reception and sort of office manager, a bit of facilities management in there as well. And she sort of said, look, I've worked at other places before. I think, if we do this, this and this, it's going to be a little bit more efficient. We can it'll be better, and it can actually free my time up a bit more. So they implemented it, and they're running those processes right now. And this is just someone coming in as a temp who's actually come in and redesigned some of their processes. Can
I just put a spanner in the works here and say, didn't that tick off the existing receptionist? How do you man that? Oh, I suppose it doesn't really matter. She was just there to improve things, right?
Yeah, she was there. She called in sick, the receptionist. Someone else came in, changed some policies and procedures, and it would have made her life better as well. But
it wasn't in mind to try and take that other person's job.
No. They definitely come in as just as I'm a short-term contractor, just to sort of manage that uncertainty. So, and if I can make the company a little bit better and a little bit better to work for, then and they really also, Lonely Planet are really focused on building that workforce where they love to work. And so, any way they can find it to make it a little bit better, a little bit easier, giving back some work-life balance to the staff is something they really sort of to jump on. So it was just a great idea, and also showed that, and I remember Kathy telling me about this Audrey, and she said she was always so impressed because she always had like 10 other side gigs going on. She was always doing other stuff. She had her own little companies, her own little ideas. She was doing this, that, and this. And she was able to, that entrepreneurial spirit, that understanding of trying to look at a problem and rather than just going, oh, that's a problem, going, right, how do we solve that?
Yeah.
That sort of mindset was really powerful and, and Kathy really loved. And that's why I remember Kathy sat down with her, she goes, look, Ben, you've sold me, don't worry, you don't need to tell me anymore. Like, I'm never going to use an agency for these types of jobs again. And that really has stayed true to this day. Do
you think WePlay is a disruptor?
Disruption. Yeah.
It's okay. You can own it. I think it is. I'm looking at my previous experience being in admin. I would have jumped at the chance to have that because you provide flexibility not only to the people who are using the services and your clients, but also to those, I guess you treat your workforce like clients as well because they are your bread and butter. Yep. But I would have loved to have tapped into something like that instead of just going, just pass on my CV to a bunch of recruiters who don't care because they don't specialise in admin. This is the bottom of the barrel stuff for them. And, when our big companies need help, we're there for them in those really small, unimportant roles.
Yeah, recruitment companies, there are some really great recruiters out there. Absolutely. But the industry itself is designed around extracting the most margin it can because it's pretty opaque in terms of their pricing. So they will try and get someone to work for the cheapest amount per hour, as long as it's legal, and then try and charge the client the most amount they can charge them.
Not to mention finder's fees.
Yes. So, but in temp, it will just be like, I've heard cases where they will get someone for $24 an hour and they will charge them out at $60 an hour. And wrap up that CV and say, they've got this, this, and this, and they've talked to the client, the worker, and said, this is a really great company, but they can't afford more than this. So their whole job is just extract that margin. That's what they aim for. There are really good, as I said, I don't want to sort of tar every recruiter. There's some really good recruiters out there who are really ethical, but the industry itself is driven towards that, increasing margin.
But I think the big guys as well who just kind of blanket everything and have the same policy and process for whatever job it is that they're placing. I imagine that the companies who specialise in certain types of recruitment, they really know the industry, they really know the roles, and they're probably a better way or a better group of people to hunt out, really. Again, go back to your professional association, say, look, I know you're not allowed to name names, but I'm looking for this type of criteria. Who do I go for? Local TAFE, if you're a tradie and you're looking for certain jobs to be done, TAFE's great. Community colleges are a great resource as well because they know their clientele. Their clientele are the students and they know them very well and they know their skill set and they're trying to help them develop different skills as well. It's just an interesting... I guess the whole industry needs a kick up the bum and needs a bit of a disruption because it was just greed. To me, in my personal opinion, it was just greed before and it was taking advantage of people who were desperate for work and it was taking advantage of companies who were desperate for personnel and then you're the guy in the middle making all the money. Yeah. So I guess wear it. It's okay. You can own that word. It's not a bad word.
Yeah, disruption is one of those terms. I think that a lot of companies are disrupting. I do think that we're doing something, as I said, new, that we are trying to build something. We're really close to our vision around creating, as I said, more fearless and empowered future of work. And I think we can create a future of work where it works for the employees and the employers. So we can get the best people who are really great at what they do, who can bring real value to an organisation, but also make it sure that it's a bit more balanced. So they have as much, they can own their own work-life balance. They can own when they want to work. They're not beholden to an employer to say, you need to do X, Y, and Z all the time. They can sort of, be their own, the captain of their own ship.
Well, to me, that's just advocacy. That's in a nutshell. I mean, that's the positivity that comes out of this as well as the support for that particular industry that perhaps has, as we mentioned before, been undervalued.
But also talking about the, different places to find staff, I do think because often organisations can have this bit of a blinker saying, well, I need to find someone who has gone to University of Sydney or whichever university and got a 2-1 or a first. I guess my English background.
A-levels.
Yeah. And that's what they think about. So the other example I had was one of the big four consultancies. They brought on an EA from WePlay. We placed her there, and she's actually just about to go perm. They're just about to buy her out. She's been there for, I think, about 3-4 months. But what was so great about her was that when we had a sort of catch-up with the recruiter, they said, we would never have hired this person. So before she joined as an EAPA, she was managing an ice cream stall. But she'd gone through all of our testing. She had got incredible scores on sort of emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, and learning agility. She spoke really well. We have a face-to-face interview as well. So she sort of ticked all the boxes. And so she got matched this job in PwC, and they said, this is like really changed our thinking around how do we go about recruiting.
Why wouldn't they have hired her? Why wouldn't they have given her a look in?
Never would have got through the CV.
Why?
So because she had no big four or big accountancy experience as an EA or PA. So, and I remember when they first matched, because on the platform, the employer only gets to see the person once they've accepted the job, because we're trying to remove all sort of unconscious bias from the process. Mm-hmm. And they did phone us up and said, can you give me a little bit more detail about this person? Have they worked for like any of the other sort of big companies? But we sort of assured them, look, try this out. It was the first time they tried the platform as well. So we were sort of a little bit nervous as well. And we said, just try it out. You know, we stand by all of our employees. We trust them. We know they can do this job. So anyway, it all worked out well in the end. There was definitely a few finger-biting moments, but they absolutely loved it. And now they're using the platform for a number of EAPAs and also some other work within the organisation. And again, it's made them rethink what they think about talent and where I can find the best talent. So don't always think it's got to come from a university or a degree. You know, as you said, TAFEs, community colleges.
No, what you've said there is that small business owners are the most intelligent, flexible and greatest workforce that the country has. Completely agree with you, Ben. Absolutely, absolutely. Look, thank you very much for coming on the program today. It's been really excellent. We've learned a lot about flexibility, understanding how we can do things better within our own workplace, absenteeism, the effect of that, the cost benefit analysis that you need to do with your staff. And I guess just basically really understanding your staff better and what their skills are rather than, pigeonholing them and thinking that this is all they can do. It's just been a great program. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Alexi.
Now, how can small businesses find out a little bit more about WePlay and how we can use your services?
Oh, very simple. Just go to the website. We're WePlayApp.com, and you can read all about what we do and sort of the services that we provide. And it's use us if you need us, really.
Excellent. Look, thank you once again, and I look forward to hearing more about your advocacy for the admin expertise, which is a very undervalued part of our economy. So thank you again for coming on the program. And of course, next week we have yet another guest coming on the program who's going to be talking more about their level of expertise also. And we have many people coming on telling us about some of their areas. One, for example, was we've got Gunnar Habitz. He's an expert in cybersecurity, been talking to us quite a bit lately about the importance of understanding what your roles and responsibilities are as a small business. Next week, actually, we're going to have a small business come on the program. Erica Armstrong, she's an expert in her field of tattooing, and not something that we think about in a positive light. She's here to educate us a little bit about what the industry is going through in terms of rules and regulations. I think there's a real lesson to be learned there for other small businesses and understanding where we need to push back when it comes to over compliance, because there is an industry who's really going through the ringer when it comes to that. Of course, this is Small Biz Matters. We're here to represent and advocate for small business as well. So if you've got any issues you'd like us to bring up, we're happy to do that. We'll have some politicians on the show coming up in the next few weeks, and look forward to having the ATO come on and talk all about single touch payroll. So lots of things happening on the program. Make sure you tune in every Tuesday, 9 a.m. on Triple H 100.1M. My name is Alexi Boyd, and you've been listening to Small Biz Matters.